Hello and welcome. Today, we are going to break down the super simple but powerful rules that decide how traits get passed from one generation to the next. We're talking about the foundational laws of inheritance discovered by the one and only Gregor Mendel. So let's dive right in. Long before we even knew what DNA was, way before we had these powerful microscopes that could see chromosomes, there was this one guy working in a quiet monastery garden who was basically figuring it all out. This is the man who laid the groundwork for everything we know about genetics today. So, how in the world did a monk in a garden unlock one of the biggest secrets of life? Well, to really get his laws, you first have to understand the man and his surprisingly brilliant choice for a lab partner, the humble pea plant. So what really set Mendel apart? It was his unique toolkit. See, he wasn't just a biologist observing plants. He was also a mathematician, which meant he wasn't just looking, he was counting. By applying statistics to biology, something nobody was really doing, he saw patterns that no one else had ever noticed. He literally counted his peas, and in that simple act, he discovered the rules of heredity. And you have to ask, why pea plants? Honestly, it was a genius move. First, they grow super fast, so he could see multiple generations in a pretty short amount of time. Second, their traits are incredibly clear. They were either tall or short, their seeds were green or yellow, there was no confusing in-between stuff. And the most crucial part, he could completely control who pollinated who. He could play matchmaker for the plants, which gave him total control over his experiments. That control was the absolute key to everything. All of this meticulous work led him to his first huge discovery, the law of segregation. And I love the subtitle here, How Traits Are Dealt Like Cards, because that's a perfect way to think about it. It's like a genetic card game. Okay, so here's the main idea. For any given trait, like a plant's height, an organism has two genetic instructions. We call these instructions alleles, and you get one from each parent. But, and here's the kicker, when it's time for that organism to reproduce, it only passes on one of those two instructions to its reproductive cells, or gametes. They have to segregate or separate. This is what ensures the offspring gets a totally random mix. And this slide just shows it perfectly. Let's say a parent plant has one allele for being tall, we'll call it big T, and one for being short, little t. Well, the gametes it produces will either get the big T or the little t. It's never going to be both. This simple, clean separation is exactly what makes genetics predictable. This whole idea of separation leads us straight into Mendel's next big idea, which is often seen as a part of that first law. It's the law of purity of gametes. And this law explains why traits don't just blend together over generations into some kind of unrecognizable mush. So what do we mean by purity here? It means the alleles themselves don't change just because they're living together in the same plant. The tall allele doesn't get a little shorter, and the short allele doesn't grow a bit taller. Nope. They stay completely pure, totally distinct. They just pass into the gametes unchanged, ready to do their thing in the next generation. This chart really shows you just how game-changing Mendel's idea was. See, before him, the common belief was something called blending inheritance. The idea was that a tall parent and a short parent would just make a medium-sized kid, and those original traits would be lost forever. But Mendel proved that was totally wrong. Because the alleles stay pure, a trait can actually hide for a generation and then pop right back up later completely intact. It's the reason you might have your grandfather's eyes, even if your parents don't. Okay, let's wrap this up. We're going to do a quick, rapid-fire recap of the most important takeaways from our explainer today. All right, 3 things to remember. Number 1, Gregor Mendel is the father of genetics. Got it? Number 2, the law of segregation. An organism's 2 alleles for any trait split up into different gametes. And number 3, purity of gametes. Those alleles are passed on pure and unchanged. They never, ever blend. And that brings us to one last, really fascinating question. Mendel's rules, they're simple, they're predictable. But life is endlessly complex. So how can a simple genetic shuffle deal a hand that results in all of the incredible, staggering diversity we see all over the planet? Now that is something to think about. Thanks so much for watching.